Hello and welcome to Bioru's video lessons. Today we are going to start talking about cells. So let's have here the introduction to cells. So what are this stuff? You probably have heard about cells before. You may even have studied cells before. So let's take a look on what they are and know what is it all about. So one of the first things for us to talk is about the cell theory. The cell theory states a few things to determine what's a cell and what do they represent. So first thing, cells. They are composed by membranes. Actually, we have an entire class to discuss the cell membrane is a special kind of structure made by some very special molecules. Okay, and now you have there the cell is surrounded by membranes. Sometimes it even have membranes inside. Okay, so you have here. Plant cells have membranes, animal cells have membranes, bacteria cells have membranes, so every single cell will have membrane. If it's a cell, it will have a membrane around. Okay. Cells also have genetic information. So in the genetic information, we are going to be talking here about DNA, maybe RNA, but in cells, it's going to be DNA. So every cell is going to be containing DNA inside, or at least should have DNA genetic information inside. And finally, cells are the basic unit of life. So everything that's alive is composed by cells, or composed at least of one cell. Sometimes we have unicellular organisms that are made of only one cell, but the cell is the basic unit of life, saying that if it's alive, it has cells, or one cell. Okay? Every living organism are composed of cells. And actually, the cell is the smallest structure in a living organism that you can separate, and still have something alive. A cell, theoretically, if given the right conditions, they can stay alive for a very long period of time. So that is what the cell theory states. Okay. However, there are some exceptions to the cell theory. There are some things that might not fit beautifully in the cell theory, and we're going to be discussing some of them. So, viruses, they might be an issue. Viruses, they have genetic information, like cells. Viruses, they are copied, so you have one virus and suddenly you have more viruses. So there are copies of viruses, so living things that usually they are related to making copies of themselves. So if a virus is alive, is it a cell? And the point is that viruses are not cells. Okay, they are not surrounded by membranes. Although some viruses have some membrane that they get from the host, they usually don't have surrounded by membrane. And most importantly, they don't have a metabolism. They don't have their own chemical reactions. So ultimately, most biologists are going to say that viruses are not alive. Although they have DNA, although they are copied, they are not alive. And if they're not alive, it doesn't break the cell theory, because actually they are not cells, they are not alive, so it's not a problem. Okay? Some other exceptions, and you don't see me here now, but I'm doing air quotes here. They are quite weird exceptions, but yeah, they are weird cells. I wouldn't say that they are exceptions, but they are weird kind of cells, like striated muscle cells. Striated muscle cells, they are very, 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 very long. They may be one cell and they may contain many nuclei. The same thing for giant algae. These algae, they can be several millimeters long. This one here is more than 1.4 millimeter long. Actually, this one's 70 millimeters long, sorry. 1.4 centimeters, as twice as much as that. This one it's a very long one. This is much, much bigger than most cells that we know. So why is this an exception? Yeah, because it's big, and cells usually cannot grow very big. Although this is big, this is large, but there's a reason for it being large as this, and it's still being functional. But we're going to talk about this later in the surface area to volume ratio class. And then remember, the giant algae, there's a reason in this image here that allows it to grow so big. Okay, fungal IFA is also kind of an exception, again, because it can be very, 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 very long. Okay, you have some cells, they make one cytoplasm that are many, many millimeters long. Some are centimeters long, so they can be very, 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 very long. So because of that, they are weird cells. So they will be in the way of the exception. But again, air quotes, not very much exceptions. One that I like to place here is the phloem cell. We studied this in plants before, and the phloem cell, they have no nucleus. They are alive, but they are alive only because of the companion cell. The companion cell gives condition for them to stay alive. I think that in this case here, this looks more like an exception. It's a cell that's alive, but just because there's another one keeping it alive. Okay, it doesn't have its own nucleus and stuff, but again, yeah, okay, it might be kind of an exception. So I'll put all of this here together. There are more exceptions, air quotes for you here, things that don't fit perfectly in the idea that you have of cells. Small, surrounded by membranes, structure with genetic material. Some are very big. Some, like the virus, they are not cells because they don't have membranes. They are not alive, so not a problem as well. So we are going to be just talking about more about this here later. Okay. Another important thing on this introduction to cells about functions of life. So we are talking about cells being the basic unit of life. So if you want to know if it's alive, it's composed by cells. But what is life after all? So one thing that makes things to be alive is a series of characteristics that we're going to see in a while. By the way, we have here two unicellular organisms, Paramecium and Chlorella. They are quite interesting because they have to perform all the functions of life. And if you want to see more about these two organisms, this QR code here, they can take you to see more information about these guys. Unicellular organisms, they have to do it all. So, what are these functions of life that you use to define something to be alive? One of them is nutrition. Living organisms need to feed. Feed again with air quotes because they need to get nutrients. Animals, they get nutrients by feeding, by eating stuff. Plants, they get nutrients by absorbing compounds through the roots in the soil, for example, to get nitrates, but they also get CO2 to make molecules through the air, and of course they get energy through photosynthesis. So different living things, they need to have some sort of nutrition to get material and or energy altogether. So here representing a cell getting its food by eating. Oh, beautiful, nice. Another thing that cells have to be alive is metabolism. Metabolism means that they have chemical reactions going on. So, for example, to digest something is to do a chemical reaction, to put molecules together, to build chemical reactions inside of living organisms is called metabolism. And cells have their own metabolism, so again, they are alive. Growth is part of living organisms, although some organisms are not growing anymore. Like me here, I'm not growing anymore, I'm a grown-up. Although I can grow laterally if I don't take care with how much Coca-Cola I drink. But most organisms, they have the potential to grow, at least in part of their lives, and cells are the same. They have the capacity of growing up. Okay? Response, yes. Living organisms have a way of responding to changes in environments. In animals, we think about brain, about movement, about behavior, but even some simple organisms, they may respond to changes in the environment. For example, it's too hot, they may change the way that they look, the way that they work. Some organs, they respond to light, some organs, they respond to oxygen, to temperature, to whatever. So there are different ways of responding. Homeostasis. Homeostasis is interesting. Homeo means the same, stasis means state. So homeostasis means keeping conditions constant. In this example here, I have a cell. This cell is happy when it's hot. It's also happy when it's cold. Why? Because this cell here can keep the conditions constant no matter the temperature outside. So this is called homeostasis, keeping condition constant. Excretion, also a function of life, putting away the leftover of metabolism. So if it's not being used, things are excreted. And finally, this one is considered by most biologists as the most important one, reproduction. Living organisms, they are capable of reproducing. reproducing themselves. So they are capable of making a copy of themselves. And cells, they do reproduce. Now, one cell becomes two cells. That's what they do. So because of all these functions of life that living organisms have, and now cells, they also have it. Now, cells are the basic unit of life, because if I separate one cell from your body, I put in the right nutrition, the right conditions, they are going to be able to stay alive. So that's what a living thing is. Okay? So I hope you had fun. Now you have a quick quiz here on this QR code to show that you have understood this video. I see you in the next class.